This is estimated claims through FY 2010 based on the information I have today. You have got to get BGS risk management in here. There is a huge out-year financial exposure here. And I think you need to be aware of that, and you know, I know the legislature established a separate fund, but you may want to have to revisit how this is financed. But please take the time to understand that issue.
Do they have some ideas?
Yeah, and they're pretty, no, in terms of financing it, no. We have financed it as we go out of the general fund, but I don't, I mean, I originally was not a real advocate for setting up a separate fund. But anyway, so I don't know what the legislature's original intention was on how they were gonna finance it, moving out to the future. The next item is to cover existing needs based on what we know to date for the Emergency Relief and Assistance Fund. Our solutions.
Could you remind, probably would be helpful to remind people what that is.
Yeah, that is when a municipal or local entity has an emergency.
A flood.
There's a flood's a good example, and the state has an obligation to pay either a portion of that.
It's the match.
The match for the FEMA.
I believe that's what this one
Yeah.
is. And then the Transportation Emergency Fund.
Is our own state fund, which when you don't have a FEMA.
When you can't get FEMA.
Yeah, and I'm
Right.
not sure.
I always
now.
get these two.
Right, I'm not sure.
mixed up.
I think this is the matching
I'm
one.
pretty sure this is
Yeah.
the FEMA match one.
Every year I confuse myself with that fund. The downward pressures is the Vermont Telecom Authority. You initially appropriated $400,000. They do need more money, and we do have a solution for that. They really need about an additional $250,000 beyond what was appropriated. And there's language in the bill to address that, and it should be budget neutral. But the $400,000 that we're able to book as a down for 2004 doesn't, 2010, it doesn't mean they don't need the money. They got the money as part of the '09 closeout, and it was carried forward, so we could take the 2010 appropriation.
Okay, and
Or
so
transfer.
we should plan to have
Tom
Tom
Murray,
Murray.
yes.
I've had a conversation with him, you know, he asked Susan and I to come in and talk about it, but we should get the whole committee up to date on
Yeah,
what's
absolutely
going on.
agree.
But no, they get bonding authority as well as a lot of.
Yeah, I'm
our
only
money, right?
making.
Yeah, but it doesn't cover their
Yeah, I'm only making
operations.
reference to the operating budget. The next is VITA, if you remember correctly, as part of the, some earlier economic development initiatives approved by the legislature. There was the interest rate subsidy, program at the Vermont Economic Development Authority. And on our operating statement, we had a provision for a write-off of that interest rate subsidy of $450,000 for FY 2010. I think they're using more ARA money now, and they're using less of the general fund that we had allocated to them. And therefore, the write-off would appear to be about $200,000 this year. If you recall correctly, we advanced them like about 1.2 or 1.3 million. It was an advance set up as a payable from them and a receivable to us. And each year they subsidize the rate, the interest rate. We would then write off a portion of the receivable. So we think that there's gonna be less activity there, and we're able to bring the rate down from estimated from 450 to 200, a little over 200,000. The next item is, keep in mind that the legislature, I think, had reduced these grants by 50% as part of, maybe perhaps the FY 2010 budget. But we're proposing elimination of the grants for municipal planning in the ACCD. And the reason why that's in here is that reduces the the amount of property transfer tax that needs to be allocated to support these activities, and therefore that more of the property transfer tax gets directed to the general fund. What is happening is, and you probably should talk to ACCD, particularly Tate Brooks, is that the regional planning commissions who receive this money from the municipalities are in agreement that they don't need the money.
Don't need or can't use,
or
right?
can't use, yeah, can't use, I think is probably a more appropriate term, is because there's less activity, obviously, taking place. The issue is ACCD normally goes out in the fall for what I'll call requests for the grants and so forth. They did not go out this fall. They got no negative reaction to that. They consulted with the regional planning commissions who said they can't use the money. I don't know, and I wasn't able to get from Kathy Fisher on Sunday when I spoke to her, whether what the Vermont League of Cities and Towns reaction to that is, but I'm providing you with the information that I have, and I've gone forward and booked the adjustment. It made sense to me. The next is the Human Services Caseload Reserve, which had a balance of about $16.3 million at the close of FY 2009. $3.1 million of that was to be used as part of the 2010 original budget passed by the legislature. And then during the decision, there was another $200,000 agreed upon to be used out of that fund. I am now proposing $12.9 million be used, of which $10 million was agreed upon between the legislature and the administration. That will leave about $70,000 in the caseload reserve account. I also added language. There are caseload increases. I would look at the AVD as a caseload increase. There's some modest caseload increases in other places in DCF. There's obviously the $10 million we agreed upon, and over and beyond that is I adjusted the language in the budget bill to also include corrections as part of the human services caseload needs, and that's $2.6 million. So you can clearly justify using $12.9 million. Doesn't leave us with hardly anything left in that fund, but you know, I helped create this fund when I was at Human Services. I protected it for a number of years from being used, not primarily by the legislature, but primarily by the people at Human Services themselves. And Jim knows how it is to push back with commissioners and say you're not using it. We all worked hard to build up that fund to nearly $20 million. I know you were a huge advocate for increases to it. And you know, I guess it's at a time of where we're at in the economic downturn. It was designed to be there for this, and hopefully someday we can maybe begin to build it up again. But sadly, we're going to use it, but then again, it was established for that purpose. So Jim, my apology, I'm not leaving you anything. The next item is I did disagree with this provision during the legislative session that redirected 09 and 2010 special education Medicaid receipts to the general fund in lieu of the education fund, but the law states that they are to be used for the general fund. I have consulted with the Department of Education. Let me back up. We actually had more money in FY 2009 come in than we had anticipated. And as a result of that, I worked with Steve and Stephanie, and we thought during the rescission it was appropriate to add another $1.1 million as our estimate for the receipts from that source. And that brought us up to a total on the FY 2010 budget post-rescission of $5.6 million. Now education believes that number is going to be closer to $8 million, so I've increased the operating statement revenues by $2.4 million to reflect the most recent estimate.